Hey everybody, welcome back. In this video we are going to be drawing eyes from different angles, and if you saw my last video we drew eyes facing forward looking up and down. So in this one we're going to be drawing eyes from a profile view looking up and down. So we'll get into kind of the structures and anatomy and the shapes that we see when we look at eyes from that angle. Let's get started. So I'm just going to start with a circle for the eyeball, and this eye is going to be kind of looking downwards in the face. So what I am going to do is just kind of place the angles that I'm doing the eyelid at. So kind of at a slight diagonal closer to the bottom because the eye is looking down. So, our top eyelid's going to be about here, and it's going to curve up across the eyeball. The eyeball kind of sits inside of the eyelid just a little bit because the eyelid has thickness to it. And the lower eyelid kind of helps us create this little V shape here. So we are just going to be seeing kind of a little wedge of the eye showing, not very much at this point. So just a small amount of eyelid. The eyelashes are actually going to come down further from here. And then usually the eyelid kind of curves up a little where we have the brow bone kind of sitting across the eye here. And that kind of cuts into the circle just a little bit. But from this angle, with the eye looking down, we are going to see a lot more of this upper eyelid than we would if they were looking forward. All right, I'm just going to erase some of this extra circle here. So again, like I did in the earlier drawings, you don't have to draw the whole circle of the eyeball. I usually just draw it kind of as a reference for the anatomy, so it's not necessary, but sometimes it's helpful if you have difficulty getting that sort of round shape without drawing the whole circle. So if it helps you, do it. If you don't need it, don't do it. It's different for everybody. Okay, so from here, we won't see very much of the iris. It's actually going to be just like almost a straight line. But remember, when we're seeing a circle from an angle, it becomes an ellipse. So it becomes a oval shape. So here's my lens cap of my camera. If I turn it, it becomes more flattened towards the side. So it gets squished visually as we draw it. Same goes for our irises. So if I were to draw this whole thing here, it would be very smooshed here. Yeah, so I'll just erase that extra circle. We don't need that. All right, so that's basically the basics right here. Now it's just shading time. We just want to make sure that we have kind of that gap. I feel like it's not showing very well on here. We have the gap of the eyelid kind of poking out from the eye here just a little bit. To show a little bit of that thickness there. Okay, so from here, shading. All right, we've got our eye in profile here looking downwards. So again, here we can really see more of the shape of the eyeball from this angle. We want to make sure that we're still indicating the thickness of the eyelid, so the eyelid kind of sticks out further than the eyeball itself, and so does the lower eyelid as we're looking at it. There's some space between the bridge of the nose and the eye, so we want to make sure the eye is set far enough back in the head to reflect that. And here we can see kind of the shadow of where the brow bone kind of overhangs over the eyeball, creating the darker shadows in here and over here. And how about we move on to an eye from profile at a slightly different angle. All right, from here, I'm going to draw an eye from profile looking up. So same concept as last time. We're going to start with the eyeball itself. In this case, the eye is just slightly tilted toward the viewer just a little bit. So it's not a true profile. It's like maybe a couple degrees closer to our viewpoint facing forward. So I'm going to just start with that angle of the upper eyelid here. In this case, because they are looking up, we're going to see a lot less of the upper eyelid. It's going to be kind of overhanging, or overlapped, I should say, by the brow bone a lot more. So, you know, we've got the brow bone kind of coming out here over the top. And obviously, like, the amount that that overlaps just depends on how heavy the brow is. So if you've got a heavier brow, there's going to be even more overlap. It's going to be further in shadow. Whereas if you have less of a defined brow bone, it's not going to stick as much. So I'm just going to lay out this eyebrow here. All right, now the important thing that I am noticing when I look at this eye is the eyelid kind of wraps around the eyeball here. And what we really want to do is show that space on this side. So I'm going to erase my circle over here because it's getting in my way. All right, so as I look at the lower eyelid, I see this kind of swooping curve here, and I see how it wraps around the eyeball itself here. And we see kind of the indication of the tear duct. So that's what tells us that the eye is tilted just slightly towards us, is we're seeing a little more of the eyelids over here kind of coming together into the tear duct. And then we have kind of this sort of depression here. I always think, you know, being a glasses wearer, that's kind of around where my glasses sit on my face. Obviously, that's going to be different for everyone, so that's not a very objective marker. All right, so I'm going to lower this down just a little bit more. Yeah, so when I see the lashes, they start to overlap this line here just a little bit. And then the iris is not quite a full circle. It's slightly elliptical. I'm not really sure how we want to change that. I need to make that bigger so it fills the space more. That's one thing when you're drawing eyes, is you want to really like pay attention to the negative space of the white of the eye. How much of it are you seeing? Because that's going to kind of affect how the eye looks. So I realized I made the opening here where the eyelids are just a little too big, so I need to kind of cut in a little bit. I always have a tendency to do that. We have this thing in our psyche that always tells us that our eyes are bigger than they are, which is really interesting. And it's probably just because it's something that we focus on the most on people. So eyes are really huge, hands are really huge because we focus on them. All right. So again, if we were to like finish the circle here, it'd be more of an ellipse because it's tilted just a little bit. But again, we don't see that. So I'm just making extra work for myself by erasing those things. All right. So we got that kind of cleaned up now. Let's add in the pupil. So we want that kind of in the center. I'm making my little plus sign to find the middle. And I curve it because obviously it's round. And that's important to understand that roundness. There we go. Yes, that's wonderful. Okay. I think one thing that I really like is this little space, the white of the eye here. And then it's kind of shadowed by the eyelashes as they kind of fall over the face and shadow the eye a little bit. From here we see a little bit more of the shadows underneath the eye. They're not super intense, but they're definitely defined. And then this person, one, because of the angle they're at, slightly tilted, we're going to see a little bit more space between the eye and the bridge of the nose, but also I think they have a bigger nose than the last person. So that makes a difference too. They have much more of a defined arch to their brow bone and bridge of the nose. So that's going to change kind of how we draw that area, whereas the person in the last eye had more of a flatter nose, so it doesn't quite raise out from the face quite so much. All right, so we got this kind of blocked in where we want everything, so from here we can just start shading away. Okay, so in our eye looking upwards from a profile, we're going to see a lot less of the upper lid. We're going to see more of the lower. And in this instance, we're really seeing the curve of the eyelid as it's kind of working across here. So there you have it, eyes at different angles from a profile view. Stay tuned for my next video on eyes from different angles at a 3/4 view. Thanks for watching and keep creating.